I know I'm a month late, but I watched Star Wars The Last Jedi and I found it both good, boring, and infuriating all at the same time. I know that means my opinion's probably all over the place, but that seems to be the case with both fans, critics, and casual audiences alike. And to put in perspective just my view of Star Wars overall, I do consider myself a fan of Star Wars in the sense that I find most of the movies pretty good. I'm always a big fan of the original trilogy. Episode 3 I don't mind too much. Episode 7 in my opinion is good, but that's only because Episode 4 is good, and I like the last third of Rogue One. If I had to list this movie somewhere in comparison with different Star Wars movies, I'd probably put it on the same line as Episode 3. And with that being said, I think this whole franchise overall is way overhyped. Overhyping and expecting so much out of different franchises seems to be a big problem in recent times. Star Wars fans trying to get Episode 8 removed from the canon is so childish to me. It's a movie franchise centered around space wizards. Stop trying to treat it like it's the most important story of all time. Anyways, back to The Last Jedi. This film's pretty messy and my opinion's kind of all over the place, but this movie's kind of all over the place. There's a lot of things in the film that overall keeps it, from my opinion, being a bad movie. For starters, I think this is easily the most beautifully shot Star Wars film to date, and I absolutely love the tone they went for this film as well. The whole film is centered around the rebellion trying to survive while they're running out of resources. The theme of struggle is prominent throughout the film. That's something I can really appreciate in a big blockbuster movie nowadays. Now to touch on my opinion earlier, I still do think that this film is good, infuriating, and again, boring all at the same time. The movie is basically split into 3 different plots. One plot is centered around Kylo Ren and his struggle to try to impress Emperor Snoke, which for me personally is the plot that I found the best, and I kind of wish the film just centered around him. Then there's the plot that involves Rey trying to convince Luke to come help them out during the war, which I didn't find too bad. I just found it a little bit boring and a lot of scenes in this plot a little unnecessary. And then there's the rebellion plot slash the Finn plot that really brings this film down and keeps me from being able to call it a good movie. There's a lot of the writing in this plot that doesn't make any sense, and scenes that really left me questioning decisions made by the writers. Everything that makes a Star Wars film great, like the acting, the soundtrack, and the world building, is all still here, so if that's all you really wanted, you're gonna have a great time no matter what. There is a lot of issues in the film that I have, but I feel like I didn't waste my time watching this film because there was a lot of things that I still did enjoy. I'm about to get into spoiler talk, so if you didn't want to hear that, I recommend clicking to this part in the video or just clicking out. There's your warning. 3, 2, 1. So I guess the easiest way to go about this is just to go by each plot point one by one. Like I said earlier, I thought the Kylo Ren stuff was easily the best part of it all. Adam Driver just did such a good job, and I love the arc that he went throughout the film. I think he's really stepping up to be a very memorable villain within the Star Wars universe. He may not be as threatening as someone like Darth Vader, but there's so much to him. I'm really excited to see what they do with him in Episode 9. Now to touch on the Luke and Rey stuff. This plot of the film just felt very repetitive to me. Rey says, "Come to the ship." Luke says no. Rey say, "Come to the ship." Luke say no. Rey say, "Come to the ship." Luke drinks breast milk and say no. Rey say, "Teach me the Force." Luke say no. Rey say, "Teach me the Force." Luke say fine. Rey practice the Force. Luke gets spooked. Rey practice the Force. Luke gets spooked. I know I'm probably over exaggerating, but that's definitely how I remember it. I do like the small twist that Luke tried to kill Kylo Ren. I thought that was pretty neat. And Mark Hamill overall is just always fun to watch, along with Daisy Ridley. But half of these scenes easily could have been cut out, and I don't think anybody would have noticed. Did we really need to see that how Luke's been surviving by drinking breast milk? Or fishing? Like, great, okay, we know that now. I'm glad I know how Luke's been surviving. Also, God, I really hate the Porgs. They are clearly in the film just to have little kids annoy their parents to buy them more toys. They add absolutely nothing to the film, and every time they popped on screen, all I could think about was how much of a business Disney is. Like, I get it, you guys like money. Great. Also, these parts of the film show the Force has no rules and does whatever is convenient to the plot. Didn't you know a Force user can connect 2 other Force users together to communicate to each other? Or that the Force can help you survive in space? Or that the Force can guide you to an area where the Force can teach you more about yourself, and then when you get to that area, it doesn't actually teach anything and just wastes the audience's time. Or that you can use the Force to mirage yourself into a certain area on a completely different planet. But the biggest one that bothers me is easily the one with Yoda. I'm very happy they used a puppet for Yoda instead of some CGI Yoda, but holy crap! A dead Yoda can use the Force to put himself into the real world and use lightning to strike down onto a planet. Why is Yoda not putting himself with the rebellion rebellions and helping them fight. Is he lazy? But none of that stuff really bothers me. It's just something that I noticed. What does bother me is all the stuff with the rebellion, Finn, and a new character named Rose. See, the rebellion's running low on numbers of both fighters and fuel, and anytime they use their lowering number of lightspeed getaways, the First Order can just track them and be right behind them. I actually really like the idea of this plot as it's so much different from most Star Wars stuff, but man, does the rebellion make a lot of bad decisions, and so do our writers. And I guess I'll just start with the elephant in the room, the Princess Leia death scene. So as I was watching this film, when Princess Leia was shot out of the ship and it had that slow shot of her being frozen in the space, I thought, okay, this is her send-off because unfortunately Carrie Fisher had passed away. We're gonna have to send out this character. Everyone in the audience was expecting it. I was expecting it. I think everyone before this film was expecting it. And I'm sorry, but I found the scene of her slowly creaking out of the ice and Mary Poppins flying back to the ship, I thought it looked silly and tasteless. For starters, it would have been just a fine send-off to Carrie Fisher. And my complaints going forward here isn't about Carrie Fisher herself, it's about the character of Princess Leia dying. And as a movie plot point, Princess Leia dying here would have been a lot better going forward for a lot of moments in this film. It would have been a lot better for Kylo Ren's overall character arc. And immediately following this fake death out scene, we have a scene of Luke deciding that he wants to help out Rey. The way he's convinced is he sees the old Obi-Wan hologram that Princess Leia sent him back in episode 4. Don't you think that scene would have been a lot more meaningful to the audience if we just witnessed Princess Leia die? And it really doesn't help considering Princess Leia does absolutely nothing for the remainder of the film. Nothing important at all. What was the purpose of not killing Princess Leia there? Were you afraid you were going to hurt feelings or something? And there's multiple times throughout the film where this kind of stuff happens. Like near the end where Finn was going to sacrifice himself to save the rest of the rebellion. The film was setting it up, spending a good 30 seconds or so setting up a death scene for Finn. He's flying toward this big old hammer that's gonna knock down the door that leads to rebellion. That way the First Order can get to them and kill the remainder of them. The music gets all slow, it gets real quiet. Finn has a look of acceptance on his face, and then all of a sudden Rose, a new character in the movie, flies in and knocks over the ship that Finn is flying, thus saving him in big quotes, even though it definitely should have killed them both. And then Rose says the dumbest line I think I've heard in these Disney Star Wars movies so far. She says, "You can't win this war by fighting what you hate, you have to do it by saving what you love." Luckily, the rebellion ends up getting saved by Luke Skywalker coming through and messing stuff up, but Rose had absolutely no idea that Luke Skywalker was gonna show up. If Luke Skywalker didn't show up, they all would have died and it would have been Rose's fault. But luckily, she saved what she loved, because apparently Finn and Rose are now a romantic couple. They had a few scenes together, but I never had a feeling they were gonna be a romance. It felt a little forced to me. I don't know about you guys. Like, even during their kissing scene, Finn had a look on his face like, do we deserve this? There's also a new character in the film named Holdo. She takes over leadership of the rebellion while Princess Leia is knocked out, because that's what being frozen in space does to you. It knocks you out. Everyone's asking her, hey, what are we gonna do? What's our plan? Where do we go from here? The ship's falling apart. Oh my goodness. And she keeps replying with, don't worry, I have it figured out. She never actually says a plan. This gets stretched out multiple times, so I'm thinking this is presenting to the audience like she really doesn't have a plan and you're kind of just in a screwed state. But later we find out that she did have a plan. Holdo was just being a bitch and not telling her survivors what they're gonna do. What was the point of having 3 scenes or so dedicated to her not telling them what the plan was? There is absolutely no payoff to it whatsoever. She has a scene later where she sacrifices herself to save the rest of the rebellion. It's an absolutely beautiful scene, but all I'm thinking to myself is, wouldn't this be cooler if this was Princess Leia doing the sacrifice? She gets revived later in the film, and then this scene happens almost immediately after it. And why is this not Princess Leia doing this? Don't you think it would have meant a lot more if it was Princess Leia? The reason why I'm so up in arms at the Princess Leia thing is that Carrie Fisher deserves a really nice send-off. And that scene was so beautiful. Wouldn't that have been such an awesome way to send off Princess Leia's character and Carrie Fisher herself? It worries me that when episode 9 comes around, they're either gonna have to CGI her in a really weird way, or they're just gonna do something where the film starts off at her funeral, or that the scroll text in the beginning of the film just says, Princess Leia's dead. That's what I'm so concerned about when there's 2 scenes in this film that if it was Princess Leia dying or being the one sacrificed, it would have been so much more. There's other complaints I have with this film overall, like how Captain Phasma dies in the film, and she hardly does anything again. But all in all, I feel like my money wasn't wasted watching this film. I don't think my time was wasted watching this film, except for a couple of scenes. I've certainly got my gripes at this film, but overall, I did have an enjoyable time, and that's exactly what I expected going into Star Wars. Having a fun time, but having gripes with it. No Star Wars film is perfect in any way. You've probably already seen it. I'm glad I watched it, and I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10.